Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Ashley Davis, and I am the Senior Editor of Fashion at National Jeweler. I'm pleased to welcome you to the latest episode of My Next Question, National Jeweler's webinar series. Today's session is hosted by Brecken Brandstrader and features Melissa Quick, President of Steve Quick Jeweler, and Jeffrey Bowling, President of Jeffrey B. Jewelers. If attendees have a question during the webinar, they can type it into the Zoom Q&A box. I will be back on at the end of the discussion to share the questions. Also, today's session is being recorded and will be available on the National Jeweler website shortly. Now I'll turn it over to Brecken. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashley, for that introduction. And thank you for my panelists for being here today. I'm so excited to see you guys. As we all know, we're here to talk a little bit early about the holiday season and the prep that goes into it for retailers before the rush of the shopping season, well before the rush of the shopping season. So since we were all just in Las Vegas, let's start there because we know that a lot of retailers use it as a chance to buy for the holiday season. So let's talk a little bit about what you guys were buying. Jeffrey, I'm going to throw it to you first. What were you buying at the shows, and were there any product categories in particular or styles that you were looking for?
You know, one of the big things were chains. We've seen an influx of so much gold has been sold, so not a lot of gold's been handed down. You didn't get a chain from your mom or your aunt because they liquidated when everybody was buying gold. So I think there's a big surgence of gold and trying to find the right mix on trying to heavy versus semi-hollow. Because it is expensive, gold is up. But chains was a big one, and fashion chains, the paperclip chain, they did a couple of versions of that, and with some diamonds without. So I think that was one of the big things I was looking for.
Okay, awesome, thanks. And Melissa, what about you?
Gosh, couple things. Number one, we're in this really unique position in that we consolidated from 3 stores to 1 strategically fourth quarter of 2019, right before the pandemic hit. And we are very inventory heavy with a lot of basics like bridal. I had some things in triplicate and duplicate. And so I have tons and tons of semi-mounts. And so I didn't have to focus on things like that for Vegas this year. Thankfully, the things that we had don't really feel dated and are still very current. So not having to buy basics in Vegas left us with a big open to buy for fun. And for us, we don't buy by category. We buy intuitively. We buy what we love. It's the number one rule. If we don't love it, we don't put it in the store. So shopping for us can be really fun that way. And we were able to put our money into some big, fun, wow pieces, as opposed to having to put a lot of our shopping budget into, I need a solitaire. I need a basic micro prong wedding band. We didn't even pick much of that up in Vegas this year. I mentioned that I know we're talking about Christmas in July, but I think a lot of us will agree that Christmas is probably the number one time for engagements, and we didn't have to think about that for our December buying.
Interesting. Okay. So within what you bought, was there anything new or exciting that you found yourself sort of flocking to or that took you by surprise maybe?
Gosh.
I did oh my God, I forgot the name, the chain that you solder on and everybody.
Oh, the permanent jewelry.
Yeah. That I thought was interesting. I'm thinking about doing it. I talked to him. I see the concept. I just don't know if it's going to be that big of a hit, but I think it is. It's getting a lot of advertising. I thought that was kind of exciting.
Yeah, certainly. Melissa, were you going to add anything to that?
For us, I would say what I've been finding exciting is the more wearable luxury. And that doesn't necessarily mean affordable. It just means wearable. I think what we've learned these last couple of years during the pandemic is that, we weren't wearing the big fancy pieces that were intended for big events, black tie events, or a huge night out on the town, but we still have people who want to have something that they feel is luxurious. So now it's for us, the things that I found that were exciting were maybe a big diamond piece, but it had a little bit of an edge to it. It wasn't just the big diamond pave earring or a big, huge statement necklace. It maybe had some black rhodium mixed in it, or had this fun sort of pave to it where it was something more accessible. And so I was happy to see that a lot of our designers and suppliers have transitioned away from statement pieces being something where you felt like you could only wear it those few times a year to, I want luxury, I can afford luxury, but I want to be able to wear it all the time.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah, very good point. I've been making that. See, we're more of a custom design studio. She, like what she was saying, Melissa, right before the pandemic, we went from a 1,700 square foot store to 1,000 square foot. And went to more studio to just do custom. But she's 100% right. I'm doing more engagement rings than ever. But everybody wants something different. That's why when I look at merchandise for the case, it's very limited. It's maybe more to just the fashion side. But you're right. I've done 2 4-carat pair earrings with a really small twist. And it was just really, really simple, but it was 4-carat total weight. We've done a couple of big pendants that where it wasn't, like you said, statement piece. It was a 1.5 carat that I just put a little off center with a small alexandrite on the side of it. I mean, that was a really cool piece, but it wasn't like the wow over the top, So that's a very good point, what she's saying.
That's interesting. And Jeff, for you, while you were in Vegas as well, I'm going back to the bridal conversation. Were you focusing on that part at all too, for looking ahead at the holidays and how big that'll be?
I think more you look for the trends of styling. And I felt as though we went there as a vendor this year. My son did a line, with the BGIC. And so we went, again, like what she was saying, instead of the big double halo or diamonds all around, we did a very brushed gold, 18 karat gold piece that's a very nice, heavy, and bezel set several stones in it. And it went really well. Now we're selling it pretty well in the store. But again, not the over-the-top piece. It's much more rustic with a larger stone.
That's so interesting. Thanks, guys. So I also wanted to touch on, we had a question that came in when we did the group of us, the NJ editors did a webinar about what we were seeing in Vegas. And we had an audience question come in that we didn't have time for, and it involved shipping. And I think we all know everything's still a little bit held up right now and slower to move. So what were you guys hearing in terms of what shipping times vendors were giving you? Were there any concerns about ordering at that time and stuff getting to you, in time?
And I think for me, it depends on who you're dealing with. When somebody's small enough that can make the moves, I haven't seen much of a slowdown much at all. They are very able to move and do what you need to do. But when you get larger companies, and some larger companies we deal, I have seen a slowdown, and they've let you know that it's going to be a little bit more lead time in orders. And yet I have not heard of a cutoff yet from some of the vendors I deal with, or what they're going to take on a new order, and they guarantee shipping for Christmas. So I'm waiting to hear that.
You said you haven't heard that yet.
I haven't heard yet.
Okay, interesting. Thanks, Jeff. Melissa, what were you hearing in Vegas?
This year, I don't think it's going to be an issue. Last year, with the Vegas shows being pushed back so far, it legitimately was an issue. I was receiving things that I had ordered past Thanksgiving, which did not give me enough time to get it photographed and up on my website. And that was really problematic. I had a lot of merchandise that I never got to list. Thankfully, we don't do a ton of our business on our website, but our clients do pre-shop. And so that was an issue. I don't think that's going to be an issue this year. We work with a lot of small batch makers, and most of the things that we sell are made domestically. So we don't have that sort of crunch of things that would be happening with the supply chain coming in from Thailand or someplace like that. So that doesn't affect us much. The one thing that is affecting us, though, is packaging. I am ordering my packaging now for Christmas. I have packaging that I ordered in February for a March trunk show. Silly me, thought that I would get it in, my 6 weeks and have it in time. And I'm just now getting the end of that order from February. So I'm already sort of thinking ahead in terms of what I might need for boxes, bags, tissue, ribbon, all of that for October. And I'm placing it now in the hopes that I have it by Thanksgiving.
Wow. I'm with you on that. That's a very good point. You're going to have to order it. And I got my, same as you, it was late last year, but it came in damaged. I mean, I could tell these pieces were in carts, in the containers you hear about, and the boxes were a little warped, and there was a little bit of damage to them because they've been sitting, I believe, in a container somewhere. So, and everybody willing to take it back, but then that's double shipping, and you don't have the box, so it doesn't really help.
Yeah, it's a lot to think about. So then moving beyond maybe, inventory and packaging, what other things are you guys doing now to sort of prep for the holiday season? And Melissa, I'm going to start with you because I noticed, and I think in one of your posts about promoting the session, you were saying we even start earlier. We start somewhere in the spring, May, I think you mentioned. So what are some of the things that you're already thinking about or have already been thinking about to prep for the holiday season?
Goodness. So the last couple of years when people weren't necessarily feeling comfortable about coming into the store to shop, we approached a couple of our partners that we knew had done lookbooks in the past and partnered with them to have lookbooks made, co-branded if possible, that we could send out to our top 100. So what we did was we started that conversation in May so that we could really hone in on the details if we had time in Vegas. And then it's on their radar, it's on our radar, and we start talking about it now. Then what we'll do is probably September, we'll identify who we want to have on that mailing list. At least I hope to do it in September. When I actually get to it, it's probably October. But we send out these lookbooks to clients. For example, if I have an Omi Privé client or a Sylvan C client, and they have these beautiful slick lookbooks, we really pay to send out something that's a wow. And we ship it priority mail. Everything gets a beautiful, like stationery, handwritten note, beautiful ribbon, and it's a care package with pre-shopping ideas. And that takes time to do. You can't pull that off fourth quarter. So you need to plan that pretty early. Also trunk shows, the people that we want to do trunk shows with, their calendars get filled up. So I have an idea of what I want before I go to Vegas. I usually broach the subject in Vegas. We don't necessarily get something on the calendar then, but the conversation continues over the summer. And I'm like right now, I'm confirming trunk show dates for fourth quarter. And then inventory. I look at inventory mix. Like, what do I have on my radar? What am I seeing on Instagram that's really exciting? Is there a new designer I want to get a relationship built with and maybe get a capsule collection going or something like that? And that conversation needs to happen now so that they have time to produce it and we have time to get it photographed and plan a little launch, social media blitz or whatever.
So along those lines, do you have any other trade shows you plan to go to then regularly later in the year or just?
No, Vegas is my last trade show of the year. I usually try and hit the Arizona shows over the winter. And then I have Vegas, and that's my big buying. I do the bulk of my buying in Vegas for third and fourth quarter.
Okay. Got it. Thanks, Melissa. And Jeff, what about you? Where are you at right now?
It's very nice. We're such a nice contrast. I am more of a design studio. We're known for custom. So everybody makes an appointment with Jeffrey to design a piece for him. And that's my big thing, right? I have only 7 showcases. And so my biggest concern is that during the pandemic, we went to a Zoom format. So now you can go to the website and schedule a Zoom appointment in case you're not comfortable coming in the store. And I think we're going this year, we're going to go back to that, being able to have that as an option where I would sit down and actually use the different 3 programs that I have to do a design or source it for a customer. And then staffing. So it's just me, my son, and the jeweler. And I work by appointment only. That's a new thing that went. Customers love it. I was scared of it at first, but now I'm loving it. But for pickups and special order pickups, I'm looking at for anybody that's like us and there's there's more people like us that are being smaller jewelers and going to custom design type pieces. You have to start looking at staffing because the special orders and the small orders you do, somebody has to be free to do that, throughout the day. And where during the rest of the year, I don't have to worry about it that much. But Christmas, I know last year it kind of picked up to that became a problem. So now I have a lady that's going to be here. Her job is just for special orders and things that we order and repairs so that I can stay into my same mode of being able to do custom design for people and making those appointments. But I realize I think it's going to be a bigger Christmas this year.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect segue because I want to talk about expectations for the end of the year. But before we do that, I wanted to just ask you guys, how have things been for you, your businesses in the past year or so? we know that I think people have been having in fine jewelry sort of banner years in 2020 and 2021. So is that along the lines of what you guys have been seeing lately? Are people buying?
Yeah, for me, we moved 17 miles away from our last location right before the pandemic hit. And then I made that adjustment with that Zoom. And when Denver was set down, we had a good year because I made a lot of pieces for people on Zoom. It was just a new thing. And then it segued into us being able to do more in the city. So it's hard to say our increase, is it pandemic related, pent up buying, or the fact that we got way closer to the city. And that's really been a help. But our business has been really strong.
Okay. What about you, Melissa?
Our business has been strong too. It's sort of interesting, as I mentioned at the start of the meeting, that right before the pandemic shut the world down, we had a strategic plan to consolidate from 3 stores to 1. And we worked, for about a year and a half going into that with Andrea Hill, who's our business consultant, to really formulate a plan and figure out how to strategize in this new paradigm of 1 store versus 3. Like, how do you goal set? What does that look like? And so we thought we had this great plan in place. We had this idea of what our goal setting was going to be. And then, 4 months later, the entire world comes to a screeching halt. And we were closed for 10 weeks. We got hit by looters 2 days before we were scheduled to reopen, and did a very slow reopen where the city was only allowing us at 25% capacity. The entire front of our store was boarded up for another 9 weeks while we waited for glass. And through it all, we still had a really decent 2020. We didn't know what expectations were going to be. And being closed in March and May, our number 2 and number 3 biggest months of the year, it was really, really scary. It was very scary starting the first half of the year by missing that kind of selling, especially the first quarter of us ever having 1 store in 12, 15 years. But that being said, 2020 ended up being a great year. 2021, we exceeded expectations for sure. We set a goal for ourselves of doing business in 1 store equivalent to what we were doing with 2 stores, our flagship and our second best performing store. And we hit that last year. And this year we're on track to even exceed that. So what started off as something really scary, like this consolidation on top of a pandemic and looting and all the things that happened with civil unrest, we're really thankful that I know a lot of people are having a bump, but we're right where we want to be, and we're so grateful for that.
That's great news. And so you touched on this a little bit, Melissa, but to give our listeners a peek ahead, I'm going to ask you guys to sort of look into your crystal ball. I know it's sort of a hard question, but I think one of the questions we're asking a lot here too is, is this strong buying going to continue? How does, the sort of, I think, fears over if there's going to be a recession, how might that affect jewelry in the remainder of the year and to come? So what do you guys expect, I guess, maybe for the remainder of 2022 in the holiday season? Do you expect to be as strong as these past few years or to flatten out a bit?
I think there's still a lot of growth still. I mean, I know there's so many negative things that seem to be out there, but the attitude of the people that I'm talking to, I mean, you know it exists, but it doesn't exist in this conversation. And it doesn't exist the desire. Right now, I just sold the largest diamond I've ever sold this week.
Wow.
And they were just so positive. So I really think we're going to see some at least a good 4th quarter going in the first of the year. Maybe come summer, we'll look at maybe flattening out. There's a possibility of it. But for right now, the conversations I'm having do not sound as though things are bad for them.
It's now. Melissa, anything else to add about, I know you mentioned you thought it'd be a positive holiday season again.
Yeah, we're anticipating a positive holiday season. One of the things that we've noticed from the start of the pandemic, and I think it's going to continue, is that we're not doing the same amount of volume that we did pre-pandemic, but we are doing the same type of gross sales. So I think the people that this situation hurts the most, the pandemic, and I think potentially the recession and definitely inflation, are people who maybe were having a price point of being in that like $300 to $1,000 range, where that type of a purchase was a splurge. And those are the people we're not seeing quite as much of. The people who have taken a hit to their 401ks, their investment package. They've been in the market probably for a while. They know that things go up and down. They saw what happened in 2008 with the housing crisis, and they knew that there was a rebound to their portfolio. And I don't think they're as frightened about it. So the people who inflation are really affecting right now, because it's expensive to get a tank of gas in your car, it's expensive to go to the grocery store and put food on your table. I don't think those are the people we're going to see making Christmas jewelry purchases. But I do think that the people who maybe aren't as affected by it as much, I think that they're still going to keep buying because they know that the market does this and they're not maybe as frightened about the outlook.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, definitely seems like there's a better outlook for maybe the higher end of things, that the very luxury, which is good. Well, I think that about does it for all my questions for you guys for now, unless there's any other points you wanted to go back and add on to. If not, I'll throw it over to Ashley and see if we had any audience questions that came in.
Thank you everyone for that great discussion. As a reminder, you can still type questions into the Zoom Q&A box, and we will try to get to as many as possible. I will kick it off with some questions that were submitted beforehand. So one question is, what do you think were the most popular stones sold at the show? So did you notice any trends in materials and colored gemstones?
For us, we bought so many opals. Oh my goodness, we bought so many opals. My husband loves opal anyway, and we always have a lot of opals in the store, but we bought a lot of loose opals and we bought a lot of finished pieces with opals. So that by far, number one, hands down, colored stone. But I just saw a lot of fun dynamic colors, not necessarily the basics. That has been a trend for sure lately. Emerald, sapphire, rubies, people getting back to the classics, but lots of fun colors. Like, I don't think you can see it very easily, but this topaz with a nice chunky heavy bezel around it. I saw a lot of fun things like that were set with like the bright blues, bright greens. And so for me, I love juicy color anyway. So we were attracted to a lot of that.
That's a great point, because I ran into a really cool vendor, and he specialized in quartz crystals. And so quartz in different really vibrant colors we got into, and the same as more of a pastel, topaz and amethyst in a pastel. Larger stones with a little bit more gold, maybe even a little bit more gold than what she's showing with the finish on it. That was my push, to look for a unique stone that wasn't going to be a lot of dollars, because I'm looking for margin on that. That's the reason why. And then dress it up really nice, and then you can really make a nice piece. It's not that much, but still in the $1,500 to $2,500 category.
It's interesting because I feel like with that conversation of finding more accessible things, it's kind of an interesting time for color, because people are willing to, I think, to expand their horizons and find maybe color alternatives. And like, to your point, Jeffrey, really interesting stuff. There's so much happening out there. It did seem like a really happy Vegas in terms of color. There were pops of it everywhere. And we were talking about on our Vegas webinar too, that it was like just these vibrant hues everywhere you went. It was awesome.
Yeah,
it was that
not to do a lower price point though, to take a very common, pretty looking stone and turn it into a much more richer piece of jewelry.
Right. Yeah, I think in general, just the color was so much fun. And I know the question was specifically like what colors, but I think it was just about being colorful. So for example, Dilamani has their confetti collection, and it's burnished set stones. And they did it with like an ombre of color going from like a dark blue to a light blue. Or of course, we've all been seeing so much rainbow jewelry, but I think it's just about like pop dynamic colors, whatever color it is for you. For us, we usually shy away from the traditional stones. So we because I mentioned before that we don't do categories, we don't make sure we have a case of emerald, ruby, sapphire. We buy the stuff that's fun. So we have multiple cases of opals. We have cases with fun blue topaz things or unusual things, something with a spessartite, or something with a spine, or something with spinel. And so those are the other fun things where you get these great, cool, like blue zircon, crazy bright colors. And those are the things that I was loving, was like this, you know, like the really gemmy, gummy, happy colors.
And Brecken, I feel like you need to answer this question too, just as our resident gem expert. I mean, I want to know like what you think is trending
for the colors. Yeah, well,
yeah.
I mean, I would have probably echoed what they said, just in terms of like lots of really, really vibrant hues, and maybe extending into even more stones popping up. But I think I mentioned this in our Vegas webinar, and that it was looking to me like a lot of greens. I was hearing a lot of greens. And so I'll be really curious to track that into like Tucson next year and see if that pops up too. Something that I thought was interesting that I've been hearing lately is people wondering if JLo's green diamond engagement ring means that like these new stones, like a lot of icy stones, they're saying, like, you know, mint garnets, lighter mints, emeralds, which I think is so interesting, and I'm ready for it. Like, I'm ready for emeralds, which are of course a classic stone and don't need a resurgence, but you know, for all these beautiful other green stones to sort of be risen with it, and see what happens there.
We've done 3 custom rings with emerald cut green sapphires within the last 3 months.
Oh my gosh!
For men, one for a man and 2 for engagement rings. And they all wanted green sapphires, and they were all emerald cuts.
That is fascinating. We're on to something here, guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
The next question, how does the buying and fulfillment from this 2022 Vegas compare to last year's Vegas, which obviously was held at a different time at the end of summer?
Gosh, for us, we so desperately needed jewelry by the time we hit Las Vegas, because we hadn't done any buying since Vegas of 2019. There was no buying in 2020 other than me calling up designers and saying, hey, I need you to send me jewelry. So by the time we got to 2021, there was this very serious hunger for things to go in the case. I don't think I bought quite as much this year. 2-pronged. Number one, because I needed 2 years worth of buying in 2021. And 2, because the way that merchandise was arriving for me so late, getting things as late as December, when I was prepping for Vegas in May, I still had things that I had bought that didn't show up until right before Christmas. And so I know that I did buy a little less this year, but I think it's in part because it was like going to the grocery store hungry when we went to Vegas in the fall. Like, I couldn't say no to anything.
I was probably opposite. Again, we don't buy as much jewelry out for the store, but for what I did buy, I did get a couple of heads up that, with Jeff, if you want to change this the way you want it, it's going to be a little late. I mean, so I got a couple people who let me know just straight up front that making a change to something that they had in their line, which a lot of times I do, it's going to be a little bit of delay on it. But they were upfront about it, let me know, and I'm fine with it, because Vegas was early enough. As long as it gets in by October, I'm happy.
Okay. And final question, for holiday gifting this year, what would the 2 of you like to buy yourself or receive for the holidays? What jewelry item?
Well, I don't think it's going to be a jewelry Christmas for me, but that's because September 5th is my 25th wedding anniversary. And I know for a fact that there's something very, very special coming my way.
Ooh.
Nice.
Any idea of the materials of that special gift?
It might happen to contain Paraiba.
Ooh.
Did you have a hand in picking it out and sort of?
I had a little bit of a hand in it. Steve didn't feel like maybe he should do this purchase completely without me and without my input a little bit. So, so I was involved a little bit, but I've asked for him to sort of finalize the details with the designer of my new acquisition. So yeah, Paraibas are number 1 on my list. I'm very, very lucky. I know that there's something coming my way with Paraiba, so it won't be for Christmas, but it will be in September.
Even better, it's coming sooner.
Yes.
What about you, Jeffrey?
Well, I better make my wife something. I don't know what it is. But for me, I think this year, I've been saying, I've had this amazing Boulder opal for the longest. And I think I'm going to make a piece for myself.
Yay.
I'm going to do that bowl.
Awesome.
It's a beautiful piece, and I've had it for 8-9 years and never did anything with it. That's it. This year I'm going to make my piece. That boulder over be my piece I wear all the time. But I do need that automatic golf cart, to follow me.
It's so tough for Steve to gift me anything in jewelry because we're partners in the business. I'm at the store more than he is, and I see everything that comes. It all passes through my hands. So it's really, really tough. I feel sorry for all the husbands and wives that are in the industry together because it's impossible to surprise your spouse with a Christmas gift of jewelry.
It is. It's very hard.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you again to our guests, Melissa and Jeffrey, for joining us today, and to our editor, Brecken, for hosting. My next question will return next month with new episodes. And thank you so much for joining us, and please take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.